their countries. We know that that's happened not only with the emails of top officials, but in the Democratic Party itself. We're not saying that happened, but we're saying we got to take a look to make sure it didn't happen and that it can't happen in the future.
We will examine this truly craziness behind the attack on our electoral system. Also, from green cards to border security, the Trump plan to clean up our system of immigration.
I think obligation number one to us as a country is make sure that number doesn't go up, which means border security, and by the way, we have 2 borders, and interior security. Over half the people who are not here legally didn't cross any border. We invited them here. They just didn't leave when they were supposed to leave. So make sure the 11 million doesn't go up.
Also, the new, even more radical Democrat Party leadership. Plus, stop the tape, turning the Obamonomics lie into Trump-enomics prosperity.
Since the president's call to action to increase the nation's minimum wage back in 2013, every state from my state of Delaware and 18 others, 55 cities, have raised their own minimum wage, from Alaska to California, Nebraska to Florida. Workers now have a shot at a paycheck they can actually live on and get out of poverty.
Plus, what universities are not teaching, the truth about the brutal and now deceased Cuban dictator Fidel Castro. Stand by. The doors of the newsroom are locked and the PC police are not getting in, so sit back and relax as we unfold today's edition of the Daily Ledger. Hello, everyone. I'm Grahm Ledger, and welcome to the Daily Ledger. Our cover story, the desperate Democrat attempt to delegitimize the 2016 presidential election results. That's what this recount is all about. It's not about getting the vote right. It's simply another attack from the Socialist Democrat Party on our constitutional system of electing presidents. So in Wisconsin, thanks to Jill Stein, they are preparing for a recount of the vote, and if Stein and company can gather enough crowdfunding money, they will attempt to taint the election results in 2 other key states as well.
There is no smoking gun. There is not something that we're pointing to say that this is wrong in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. What we are saying is that there's enough peripheral evidence to warrant that our system should be investigated. We are not doing this to the benefit of one candidate over the other. We're doing this for the benefit of the American public so that we can trust that our votes are counted.
Computers make mistakes. We all know that. And computer security experts around the country have said that these machines are vulnerable to hacking. No human eyes have looked at these ballots yet. So part of what we want to do is have human beings look at the ballots and make sure.
Okay, so according to these clowns, this recount is for our own good. But in reality and constitutionally, there's no reason for it. Absolutely none. And Team Hillary has her fingerprints all over this. In fact, by doing this, Hillary is reneging on an agreement with the Trump team.
On election night, Hillary Clinton was the one to say it's time to accept the results of the election and look to the future. And it was their team that cut a deal with our team that said when the AP called the race, they would call within 15 minutes and concede, which they did. It is a total and complete hypocritical joke that the group of people that thought that they were nervous about President-elect Trump not conceding are the people that are conducting recounts in states where we've won by over 68,000 votes. I think the American people know this is a waste of everyone's time and money. It is only to divide this country when we need to come together, no matter who you are, Republican, Democrat, race, gender, whatever it is, and look forward to the future of rebuilding this country and getting us back on track. That's what President Trump is going to do. That's what we want to do. And this is a total and complete distraction and a fraud and something that they should drop. But look, they will waste our time. And we will staff up with thousands of people. We will sit there and look through Scantron ballots. We will win again for the second time, and they will lose again for the second time. But our country doesn't need it.
All right, so where is all this heading? Will this post-election farce be relegated to the Badger State, or will it spread to the Keystone State and the Great Lakes State? And what about voter fraud? How bad was it during the 2016 election? Joining me now from Farmville, Virginia, president of the Institute for Liberty, Andrew Langer. Andrew, okay, so we have no evidence whatsoever of vote tampering or hacking into the vote in Wisconsin, yet for the good of the people, they're telling us, we need to look into the results. In other words, recount the results. I don't quite follow that logic. Do you? Can you help me out on this?
Well, you know, it's interesting because it's very telling what the spokesman for Jill Stein's campaign said, right? He said, we're not doing this to benefit any particular candidate, and yet they're only doing it in states in which Hillary Clinton won. And you have, you have real situations where we know that folks who are not eligible to vote actually cast ballots. Virginia, where I am, the governor made a last-ditch attempt to get felons the right to vote. We know that that illegals voted in California. And yet here we are dealing with a situation in Wisconsin where, A, it's impossible for outside foreign governments to hack these machines. If they're going to be hacked, they would have had to have been hacked at the site at which the ballots were being cast. There's no allegation of that whatsoever. And when you go and you look at these machines to examine their ballots, there's nothing that can be proven because they don't have a paper record behind them. Like, at least in Virginia, Graham, you know, you had to fill out a Scantron. It had to go through the machine. Right. You were able to count those things down the road. The machines they're talking about have no such paper trail.
But your governor, Terry McAuliffe, he printed up 1 million provisional ballots when, if I remember correctly, there are only 5.5 million registered voters in the state of Virginia. That's an unheard of number. So who knows how many of those provisional ballots fell into nefarious hands, and those ballots actually got cast. You talk about the need for a recount. Maybe it's Virginia.
Well, the good thing, of course, in Virginia is that we have voter ID. So at least you have to show ID when you go to the polls, and that's a very good thing. Yep. But the real issue here is the issue of felons who voted. The governor sort of using this power of the pen. He claims that he signed each individual reinstatement himself. I find that very hard to believe. But the reality is, Graham, that as we're looking at this, and we know it's going to spill over into Pennsylvania and Michigan, President-elect Trump is doing the right thing by raising the issue of voter fraud elsewhere and the need for voter integrity generally, right? This is the right way to sort of raise this issue moving forward.
Pew Research estimates somewhere in the neighborhood of 25 million corrupt voter rolls. That is, people who shouldn't be voting, dead people, people who are registered to vote in multiple states. We have a mess, and voter ID and a few other simple fixes could repair this damage. But let's remember back to the year 2000, and of course the infamous challenge by Al Gore to the election results there. Remember, after December 19, these results are certified, so there is certainly a clock ticking here. I think the deadline in Pennsylvania is Monday, and the deadline in in Michigan is Wednesday. And remember, Michigan just finalized its tally, and Donald Trump won by 10,000 votes there. So here's what I think this is all about, Andrew. This is all about trying to delegitimize the presidency of Donald Trump.
Yes. Well, that's exactly it, Graham. You know, the fact is the Democratic Party was able to rebuild its efforts between 2000 and 2006 based upon completely delegitimizing the election victory of George W. Bush in the 2000 elections. In fact, a lot of the seeds of divide that we have today, this massive divide, can all be traced back to the 2000 election and the feelings of being cheated that were sown by the Democrats in the months after that election was certified and finalized by the Supreme Court of the United States. And so the Democrats recognize, and the Greens, the progressives generally recognize, that the more that they delegitimize the election of Donald Trump, they can build on this anger, they can divide America even further, they can raise money, and what they're really hoping to do is pull away those middle-class voters who pulled the lever for Donald Trump. They want to bring them back in the Democratic fold. The only way that they can do that is by making Donald Trump appear to be an illegitimate president.
Yeah, and it hurts our system. This does great damage to our system of electing presidents and anybody else in this country. But when you mention divided America, if you look at the election results maps, this is the election result map for Donald Trump. Essentially, it's roughly 3 million square miles of America. 85% of the map is Donald Trump. When you compare that to Hillary Clinton, it's only 15% by population, by the way. Clinton gets 54%. Trump gets 46%. That's by population vote. When I look at these two maps, Andrew, I say thank goodness for the Electoral College.
Well, absolutely. I mean, that's the whole reason why we have an electoral college. The founders set it up so there was this balance, because the interests of folks in rural states, in rural areas, you know, the rural parts of Wyoming and Idaho and Montana, they have very little in common with the interests of folks in the inner cities or the urban areas of New York and Los Angeles and San Francisco. Even better, the point is they recognize that the rights of those folks in these rural areas could be held cheap. If you think about it, right, the only impression that people in these cities on the East Coast have of these western rural lands is that they're all national park lands, and they would push to have them managed as such, whereas they need to be managed for a variety of uses. I spent a lot of time, Grahm, in the early part of my career working with people in places like Nye County, Nevada. Nye County is the size of Vermont and New Hampshire combined. It is 93% owned by the federal government, and those lands need to be managed for the utilization of the people of Nye County and the people around Nye County, not for the interests of folks who were in Los Angeles, New York, and San Francisco.
And that brings us to the new Trump administration undoing a lot of what the old Obama administration has been doing for the last 8 years in terms of regulations. They need to get to it right away, script the first 100 days, script the first year, maybe the first 2 years, because there's essentially a 2-year window here, because you never know what's going to happen in 2018, the election results there in the United States Senate. I say go for it. Get rid of the filibuster rule, at least suspend the filibuster rules temporarily in the Senate, and clean this mess up, because we only have a 2-year window. Andrew, thanks. Coming up next, the growing number of red flags over immigration green cards. Also ahead, the liberal alternative to Nancy Pelosi.
These people left us in droves. They either went for Trump or they stayed at home. And without a good message that connects deeply with them, where we're talking about issues that they care about, that their family talks about when they're sitting at the kitchen table, they're never going to come back.
This is not just any cruise. This is MSC Cruises, one of the largest cruise lines in the world, where every detail is beyond just ordinary. You won't see just one performance. You'll see a different show every night. And you won't be served just any meal. You'll enjoy fresh